came from a working class family. Some of you know my dad and my mom and dad. We've talked tonight. It's great to see you again. And we didn't have a lot of money, but we never spent more than we had. We had a budget. This is the first time since 1974 that our federal government has no budget. We have no budget right now. We had a budget last year, and that budget was trillion-dollar deficits for as far as the eye can see. We have no budget this year because the leaders in Washington don't want to take a vote on something they know is going to be unpopular. Now, in this room, I don't need to tell you that a good unit, a good military unit in the middle of the broad daylight in 60-degree weather, how much leadership is really necessary? That unit moves forward. But it's in the dark of the night, it's in the driving rain, it's under fire, that leadership steps up and says, follow me, we can get this done. That's not happening right now. We should have a budget. We must have a budget. Now, to make that budget, we're going to have to make some tough choices, and I'm going to talk about some of them here in a second. But we absolutely cannot go forward without a plan. Without a budget, there is no plan. And with no plan, we can't create jobs, and we can't restore fiscal responsibility. So we absolutely need to move forward with leadership, and with a plan, and with a budget. $1.3 trillion deficit this year. Over $13.4 trillion worth of debt. That's what we're in right now. This is the hole we're in. You know, to put it in perspective, if we're just talking about taxpayers, that's about $94,000 a taxpayer. If we count the kids, which seems unfair, although because of our actions, we may be the first, my generation may be the first generation to leave our country worse off than we found it. If we count children, you're talking about $38,000 worth of debt per American. We're going to have to move in a different direction. What we need right now is to get our private sector economy going. And why that's so important is, first of all, we need to provide the space and the opportunity for everyone to rise to their God-given potential, number one. Number two is, it's easier to balance the budget when you're not at 10% unemployment. When you're at 10% unemployment, you're paying out more in social services, you're paying for more unemployment, and you're taking in less revenues. So when people talk about balancing the budget, I would tell you, the first thing we need to do is get the private sector economy going. It's going to make it easier as we start to make the hard choices. Now, to get the private sector economy going, we have seen an approach in the last 20 months. That approach was from Washington, D.C. We were told, hurry up and pass that stimulus bill, and when you do, unemployment won't go above 8%. Now, we know what happened. Unemployment went to 10%, and it's hovered pretty close to there ever since. And incidentally, we hurried up and passed that bill, and then we found out only days later that there were things in there we were not proud of. We were giving bonuses to people who didn't deserve bonuses. We learned this week that we had an opportunity to actually fix the Highway Trust Fund back then, and we rushed through it. And now we're looking at having to double back and try to figure out how we might be able to include more infrastructure as we try to get this economy going, and whether or not, and how we pay for that. You know this, veterans know this, you know. If you don't take the time to do it right the first time, when are you going to find the time to do it right the second? You know, that's the situation we're in right now. We're in a tough spot. But rather than trying to grow this economy from Washington, D.C., what our campaign is about is, first of all, listening carefully to the engine, those that create the jobs. 70% of our jobs in America are created by small business. Small business create the preponderance of our jobs. Not to say that, I mean, it's wonderful when you get a Hail Mary. You know, you get something like Global Foundries, AMD comes in. That's a great thing. And we're so excited. We're so excited about the prospect of nanotechnology. But we can't count on that. What we need to do is grow jobs 4, 5, 6 at a time through small business. And the way to do that is to not send our tax dollars to D.C. hoping that they'll save us. That doesn't work. First of all, you know there's a middleman. For every dollar we send down there, you gotta feed the beast. You gotta pay the bureaucracy down there. We're lucky if we get 80 to 85 cents back on we're lucky if we get that on every dollar we send to Washington, D.C. So why would we want to do that? Why wouldn't we want to just keep that money right here? And then the strategy should be to remove impediments to growth. And by the way, we get this by listening carefully. You know that my opponent says, I'm the small business owner, and he's the soldier. I know how to grow jobs. Well, my opponent was a successful small businessman. but he's not acting like it right now with his votes. And I will tell you that one thing that I do bring on top of the executive leadership is I listen. And I've listened carefully to what small business owners are telling me. And what they want to see is us remove the three major impediments to growth. And it's tax, and it's regulation, and it's healthcare costs. Those are the three major impediments to the growth of our economy. So our approach should be targeting the problems, not the symptoms. So our campaign is about targeted tax and regulatory relief. So that means the people's tax cuts of 2001 and 2003, we need to preserve them because now is not the time to be raising taxes. We did this in our history before. We've raised taxes in a recession before. It is not good. We need to learn from history. You look at the period, if you ever have a chance, study the period 1929 to 1931. Take a look at what we did. We started in a recession, and there was going to be a recession. We made it worse by a tariff, which is a tax on imports, in 1930. And then we turned around, because we started running a major deficit in 31, the answer was raise taxes. In the fall, when the Congress drafted the revenue bill of 32, in 1931, our country got $2.1 billion in revenues from taxes. We then had the largest peacetime tax increase in our history at that point. And revenues in 32 went down to $1.9 billion. You see the point I'm making here. Now is not the time to raise taxes. What we need to do is recognize the fact that we need targeted tax relief. What we need to do is, look, I am studying this really hard. You look at the alternative minimum tax. It was created in 1969. It was meant to ensnare some Americans who were writing off everything and not paying taxes. What's happened over time is it threatens to ensnare up to 25 million Americans next year. Now keep in mind, a lot of those are small business owners who file under their own name or under S Corp, and they're getting hit by the alternative minimum tax. Now in New York State, the alternative minimum tax, I think, is unfair. Because line 3 in the alternative minimum tax makes you add your state tax in there, and your local tax. Well, what if you're competing against Florida? Florida has no state tax. There are issues with this tax. We need to target it so that we can help our small business owners right here in New York grow. But it's not just targeted tax relief, it's targeted regulatory relief too. In the interest of time, I won't go deeply into this, but let me just say this. There is a bill before the Congress right now that recognizes the fact that over time, we have given too much power to the bureaucracy, an unelected bureaucracy. And this bill called Reins In says that any time the bureaucracy enacts a rule that impacts $100 million or greater in the economy, it has to go to the people's house. It's got to go to the Congress for an up or down vote. Why that's important is if I don't vote right on that to you, you can fire me. You can say that that rule that the bureaucracy enacted and the congressman voted for crushed my business. You can vote and kick me out. That's accountability. We the people get responsibility for our government. I support this bill. I want to co-sponsor it and bring it to life. There's more that we need to do with targeted regulatory relief. And then repeal and replace the health care bill. We're going to have to do it. I am not one to say that the bill was ill-intentioned. There are those out there that think that that may be so. We just respectfully disagree. I don't think this president is ill-intentioned. I don't think that. I think he's ill-advised. And I think he's enacted policies that have hurt us. I think the health care bill is a prime example. We're seeing now in the paper the fact that our premiums, we're seeing this widespread, and it's reported in the national news now too. Premiums are on the rise beyond the rates they were last year. Taxes, you know, there's a couple dozen new taxes in that health care bill. You're looking at new regulations. There are untold number of regulations. The 1099 is getting a lot of coverage now in terms of for small business owners. Anytime you have a vendor in excess of $600, you're looking at a new requirement that's going to add to your transaction costs and your overhead. And then finally, big government. At a time that you've heard me say that we need to be cutting the size of the federal government, we're adding to the federal government. We got a couple dozen new boards and commissions in this bill, and we hired, some estimates are that we're going to have to hire 16,500 new IRS workers to enforce it. Now you know they have nothing to do with your health care bill, and your health care in general. This, ladies and gentlemen, this is moving in the wrong direction. And I wish we could save this bill. I'm not convinced that we can. I think we need to repeal it, but we absolutely need health care reform. We've got to come forward with the reform because as you saw before the bill, costs continue to rise. Now there are a lot of issues with the health care system, and we're not going to be able to solve all of it in this first go round. What I think we need to do is to get the confidence of all the American people and to do it in a bipartisan way. What we should do is focus on costs, not access. Listen, access is an issue. I don't disagree with that, but the primary issue is cost. And also with regard to access, we had a safety net. It was Medicaid. Imperfect, to be sure, but we had a safety net. 88% of those in our district had health care insurance. The problem is we're paying too much for it. But we didn't focus on that, and now we're seeing all our health care rising, and that's a problem. What we need to do in a bipartisan way is with precision, is attack the cost. I think that we can do that with more competition in this system to get access to insurance companies across state lines. You know that some of your insurance companies are not-for-profit, like CDP, HP, giving them an opportunity to compete for work that's more prolifically here in New York and then beyond in states. I think we need to understand more about the costs that we have. Right now we don't generally. You get a summary of benefits, but how much do you really know before you go to get your health care? I think we need to have more skin in the game, more impact, that when we keep our blood pressure down and when we keep ourselves in good health, we should be rewarded for that from our insurance company. Now that's not to say that we should penalize people who need health care. I don't think that's fair, because that's why you have it. But I think the way to incentivize it is for those that find a way to keep themselves in good health. And then finally, the tort reform. We need the tort reform on the first order effect in terms of what it will do for premiums, for malpractice insurance, for doctors. That's important. That will help us with costs. But then in terms of what it will do to bring more stability to the system, which will impact the defensive medicine practices, which you know are rife throughout New York and beyond. So we need to get after this. States that have done it have seen it work for them, Texas and California. Now here's the thing. When we do this targeted tax and regulatory relief and we repeal and replace the health care, what you see is small business owners will have more bottom line and all of us will have more disposable income. You put that together, that's the stimulus for your economy. 2/3 of our economy is consumer spending driven. When we have more disposable income, when we have small business owners who are in a position to recapitalize and to expand and hire, that's how we're going to grow our economy. And that's what's going to start moving us towards the first step towards the balanced budget.